On Tuesday, I drove to Georgia. I didn't really want to drive all the way down to Georgia, but I wasn't sure when I would need to leave and come back home, so I decided it would be more simple if I drove. I ended up driving down on Tuesday and driving back on Friday. Now, it's been a while since I lived in the South. I went to college there in the 1990s. And I know I've been away from the South for a while, simply by virtue of a number of sort of key markers while I was down there. I noticed, having been here for a while and been other places for a while, people are very touchy down there. I did not really pay attention to that when I lived there, but people are very keen and quick to hug or to give you a rub on the shoulder, and some of us like that a great deal. And for some of us, it's just unfamiliar. I didn't say it was right. I didn't say it was wrong, Grace. I just said it's different. And so anyway, I was in the car on the way home. And I was somewhere near Greenville, South Carolina. And I was actually, I just turned the radio on. I was looking for the news of the day. And so I turned the radio on, and I hear, you're listening to South Carolina Public Radio. Okay. And the host, a gentleman whose accent I will not impersonate for you, said that he just received a picture from a lady named Amanda Peterson, who'd sent him a photograph from Heath Springs. Okay. And he goes on to explain that the picture is of Amanda's daughter's rubber rain boot that had been sitting out on the porch. And inside the rubber rain boot, there was a little animal that had made its nest in there, a southern flying squirrel. And this particular southern flying squirrel was looking a little groggy, curled up inside the rain boot. After all, southern flying squirrels are nocturnal animals, which, if you didn't know, means they come out at night. And that this picture had been taken during the daylight. And I'm thinking, when is the news going to come on? He then proceeds to tell us about the anatomy of the flying squirrel's eyes and the folds of skin between their front and hind legs that enables them to glide from branch to branch. Weather? Can I get some weather, please? How they eat and store food. They're looking for acorns while you're asleep at night. And most of us don't get to see the southern flying squirrel because they are out at night and you're usually up during the day. And so it went for another 3 or 4 minutes. Why the flying squirrel is a treasure of the region and so on and so forth. And I thought, just come on, man, get to the point. And so then I thought, my gosh, is this what people think of me when I am preaching? Come on! Just get on with it, man! So it should be noted, thanks to that man, I remember everything he said about the southern flying squirrel. But in honor of that thought, I don't have a 3-point sermon. I have a 1-point sermon this morning. I am getting to the point. I'm going to try to get to the point. The old and the new set against each other, one complementing, I hope, the other. A widow from a story from long ago in the Gospel of Luke, and the story of a 60-something black man in Atlanta. I purposely omitted Simeon from the reading for this year. Usually what's known as the Song of Simeon, or the Nunc Dimittis, comes right before Anna's testimony, but Luke gives Simeon a number of words to offer, this song that he offers, and they are beautiful words. Master, now you're dismissing your servant in peace according to your word, for my eyes have seen your salvation. Beautiful words. We don't get to hear Anna. Maybe she's that person at the party who is about to say something profound, and then somebody else stands up and says something, and they think, oh, well, that person kind of said it all already. So it's pretty common to focus on Simeon and not Anna. In all of the classical paintings of this scene, she usually gets pushed off to the side. She gets pushed off to the side by preachers, or at least she has by me in the past. And as we're captivated by Simeon's words, I think she gets a little shortchanged by Luke. There are other people in the scene that we want to pay attention to, of course. The child, his parents, the eloquence of Simeon, the main event. But as Luke does, he pairs a male with a female character. Often Luke does this, where there's a story about a man, and then a female will join the story, or vice versa. Luke's gospel really is fascinating in its egalitarian structure. We are left to imagine what praise Anna offers, what she has to say about the child for those living in hope, what the content of her prayers might be. All of the characters that Luke introduces, the people who are at the core of the Jesus narrative, seem to be humble people who have a sense of who they are and in whose world they live. Elizabeth and Zechariah, Mary and Joseph, the shepherds, Simeon and Anna, their primary role is to direct people to God's goodness and grace, God's providence and direction. In the midst of their business and our own, we are reminded as we enter this new year the value of knowing who we are and whose we are, of knowing that we don't have to be at the center of every story or the focus of others at all times. It's okay for our thoughts to remain our own. It's perfectly fine to stay in our lanes. It's okay to take a cue from Anna and just pray. But Anna is perhaps a little unnerving to many of us. It is unnerving to encounter someone who is religious enough or spiritual enough to find someone who does nothing but pray and offer nothing but praise. This is a person who would likely disorient you or me, or if we're lucky, reorient you or me. Remind us, for those of us who do not believe we're led to live at the temple offering praise and prayer all day long, engaging in fasting with some frequency, that there are people in this world who do feel called in that way and who do believe in God in such a way that this could be their life. And so what does this look like in 2017? I have only one point to convey this morning. This is a story from this week when I was down in Georgia with my father, who had heart surgery on Thursday. We talk about bypass surgery as if it's routine. We talk about a lot of big things in our lives as if they are routine because they are common, and maybe they are routine except when they are happening to you. So my father had heart bypass surgery on Thursday, and it was good for me to be there. It was good for me to see a whole number of things, one of which is you realize, at least at Emory Midtown Hospital, that every cog in the system matters. Of course, it matters who your surgeon is, and you hope like crazy that he or she had a good breakfast that day and a good night's sleep the night before, and they're not arguing with their spouse. But the same goes for the PA who starts the anesthesia in PreOp, and the tech who shaves your leg where the surgical team might take a vein. In this case, a lady named Liz was my dad's tech, and she needed to be on her game. You can be tough. You can be ready for the main event. But when someone comes to shave your leg saying, we may or may not take a vein out of this leg, nerves might start to set in a little bit. Liz needs to know what she's doing. Audrey, the food service worker, she came the day before. She laughed with my dad about how he wanted cottage cheese with his salad. She said, well, I'm from the country. We don't eat things like that. It's kind of weird to me. And I said, you don't need to be from the country to think that cottage cheese with your salad is weird. Trust me. And there was Maureen, the nurse originally from Nigeria, and Jennifer, the PreOp nurse from Atlanta, and Kathy, the ICU nurse from Alpharetta, and on it goes. Every single person needed to be on top of their game. But I will never forget Derek. He has perhaps the most basic task. Derek is a transporter. It's to wheel the patient from their hospital room to the PreOp area. Simple enough. But there is something deeply nerve-wracking about this time before you have surgery. My dad was told that there was a 5% chance that this surgery would be the end of his life. Good odds, right? 95% chance I'm going to make it through and be all right. But when it's you, or when it's your father, 5% starts to sound pretty high. Going down to the PreOp area, I had butterflies. My mom had butterflies. I'm sure my dad had butterflies. And Derek came and he started to push. Mr. Shaw, did you have a good Christmas? Yes, thank you, I did. Derek then told us about his Christmas at his niece's house, how they don't get together very often, and because they don't, a couple of people, even though the spread was laid out on the table ready for everyone to eat, a couple of people needed to testify before they could eat. A couple of people needed to testify about their blessings before they could eat. Then he asked my dad, do you have any grandchildren? I have 2. And then Derek talked about what a wonderful blessing it was to have grandchildren. He said, sometimes it's easier to love your grandchildren than your own children. Do you know what I mean? And I stood right there and I thought, no, what do you mean? Then he talked about what a blessing it was to have young ones at the table at Christmas time, and what a blessing it was to be able to take them outside afterwards, and what a blessing it was to have them around for a number of hours the next day. When we got to the PreOp area, he said to each of us, blessings to you, as he shook our hands and looked us in the eye. And then the penny dropped. It occurred to me that the whole time between my dad's regular room and the PreOp area, the only thing that we had heard about, the only thing that we had talked about was blessing. The blessing of family, the blessing of food, the blessing of children, the complexities of navigating relationships, the blessing of testimony, that despite what has happened, God is good. Going into this nerve-wracking, frightening moment, our anchor point, the baseline that Derek had given us, was blessing. And then it also occurred to me that all this man does is take people into the scariest moments of their lives and talk about blessings. That is his job, and that is his life. And that is really something. Peace be with you.